So I'm super excited to kickstart the V-Spark seminar series with an amazing woman entrepreneur. But before we get started, a few general housekeeping things. So today, first, the speaker will talk for 30 minutes, and this will be followed with a question answer session. So to pose your questions, maybe you could use the chat box and pose your question over there. And at the end, once the speaker finishes talking, then we'll have the question answer session. And this event will be recorded. And to access the event, you could go on the VSpark page, and I'm going to post the VSpark link on the chat box over here. And now let's get started. Firstly, I would like to thank everyone for attending. We hope you find this session for interest and are able to get the most out of it. Also, a very big thank you and a warm welcome to Ms. Hafsah Jumare for taking time to speak to us about entrepreneurship and her personal journey. So I'm super excited to introduce Hafsah Jumare. Ms. Hafsah Jumare is from Nigeria. She's the founder and CEO of Co Amna Market Limited. She comes from a family of entrepreneurs and has an undergraduate and master's degree from the University of Cape Town. Hafsa has worked as a junior researcher to understand the risk preferences and behavior of farmers in relations to farm technology uptake. She served as the anchor for the Trade, Investment and Competitiveness Policy Commission at the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, as well as Business Development Officer at Micro Development Consulting Limited. She has published articles and has several awards. To name one, Hafsa has been awarded the Commerce Faculty Award of Excellence in Environmental Policy. While pursuing her PhD, Hafsa realized the problems that the farmers, the small business owners were facing over there and decided to find a solution to the problem rather than researching it. Hafsa founded Co-Amna Market, a social enterprise that is focused on applying progressive economic instruments to boost market linkages and facilitate exchange with and between business entities in low-income communities. And she will be talking about her experiences in generating her business idea and executing it. She will also touch upon the unique challenges she faced from being a female entrepreneur. Today, Hafsa is accompanied by Amal Hassan. He is the founder of Outsource Global. Dolapo, she is the new founder of Allen Green Recycling. Nathaniel Peterson, he is the founder of Burgeon Strategy. And Asamu Mukhtar, who is the head of software development at Coamna. So without taking more time, I would like to invite Hafsa.
Okay. Thank you very much for that intro, Tripti. Hi, everyone. My name is Hafsah Jumare, and I am the founder of Kwamana. And today I would like to tell you about my startup journey, and hopefully you'll be able to take some learnings out of it. I'll just start by sharing my screen so I can present this. Okay. Before I move forward, I would like to say that during the Q&A, feel free to ask questions to any of the people that have joined me in this call. Amal is a very well-known founder and startup entrepreneur in Nigeria. She's kind of crossed the line to that success. Asma'u, while she's the head of our tech in Kwamana, she's also a founder herself of a tech platform that teaches kids how to code, especially kids impacted by violence and insurgency. We also have Nathaniel Peterson, who's in strategy consulting for startups. Dolapo, who also just founded her startup and would be able to give you a lot of information around what it's like to get started. So I'll just tell you a bit about me. Like every kid, I wanted to be an astronaut. But I ended up focusing on economics. I studied smallholder farmers at the University of Cape Town, as Tripti said. So my focus on this was around how do we get smallholder farmers to scale. 70% of the labor force in my country is smallholder farmers, and a lot of those smallholder farmers don't necessarily have the right type of income to enable them to live a good life. I had PhD admissions, like Tripti said. I did my master's, worked at the unit at the University of Cape Town, researching on farmers and uptake of insurance and uptake of credit. How do we get technology to them to help them scale? And then I went on to start writing my PhD proposal, and it just felt too disconnected. It wasn't helping me see the solution. I didn't feel like it was applied enough. So I decided I would go and find a solution. But I was broke, so I actually became a consultant. Uh, Interestingly, I spent a lot of time as a consultant working with companies that we were trying to reach this segment of farmers and small businesses, helping them optimize, helping them get them to take up credit and insurance. There's this entire movement in the developing world to get farmers capital, insurance, cash transfers, investments, to get them to grow, to get them to take their own way, to channel their own paths out of poverty. So I founded Koamana to identify the business cases around these issues and then to develop technologies that would actually close those gaps. I started my entrepreneurship journey like everyone. I did my research on how to become a successful startup, what to do. I spent a lot of time business planning. I did the identification of the problem. I had already done that before in my past work. I did the ideation and the solution. So I had focused all my energy on saying, okay, how do we get farmers to take up capital? We had different options. We developed ways to enable them to take up credit that were creative. I had someone that wanted to work with me to help them have their own currencies in their own communities so that they can kind of keep the wealth within those communities and generate capital in that way. I spent a lot of time building the organizational structure. What what should our leadership look like? What should our team um, like breakdown look like? I forecasted our growth, thought about the different value chains we were targeting. It was farmers, it was tailors, it was specifically in different value chains within farmers, onion sellers, different ways to grow within these networks. But in the end, all our planning, all our strategy just went out the door. It wasn't useful. Um, and the thing that we found the most was that we were actually looking at our users as beneficiaries, like the entire development world has been doing for the past few years. They need capital, give them capital, they're poor, that's the only way they can grow. But if you actually think of them as just businesses, what do you want a business to do? You want them first to have demand, and you want them to be able to have the right set of information or the right set of production methods to become efficient. So looking at them as beneficiaries have kind of ruined the the way we treat them, the way we interact with them, the type of technologies we want to give them. And I think that was the first breakdown of our assumption. And like I said, our users we found just needed market information to begin with. They needed to know where their buyers were. They needed to know how to do better in their businesses, grow, get demand, be efficient, and then get to capital. So after all of this, we also found that our users just wouldn't pay for whatever it is we were offering them. And a lot of this has to do with them not quite knowing what the value was to them at the beginning. And a lot of it also has to do with trust. So the whole takeaway from this is that I really regret the time I spent just a year wasted doing research, getting prepped. A lot of my mentors were like, Hafsah, get started. And I thought I was being clever by just doing research, but that ended up not being very useful. So finally, we now have our product. It's called Amana Market. What it does is it links these farmers and small businesses to markets. It's a simple e-commerce platform. We tailored it specifically to this market segment. So you get a lot of people taking models that work in the rest of the world and trying to apply it to this. but we realized an e-commerce platform that wasn't tailored to them wasn't usable for them. We also give them information. We currently do this in very crude ways. Everything is still coming together. But that's one thing that we're also offering them now. After all of this, after getting through the market, getting the demand, getting the right information, we then help them access capital, loans, investment, what type of capital support do they need to go. So that's the next thing we do. Amana Market, like I said, looks like a typical e-commerce platform. It's not. They're able to, the small businesses and farmers are able to come on and transact as a cooperative or as an individual. Uh, they are able to find buyers, the buyers rate them. But the most distinct thing is, like I said, we don't charge them. We don't charge our users. They don't pay. We generate our revenue through the ethical sales of data to people that are actually trying to target them, financial institutions, NGOs, those types of business entities. So we piloted in December. We rolled out Amana Market, and during our pilots, we kept getting feedback from the small businesses and farmers that, well, this doesn't quite work for us. So we had to pull the product off the market and come back with something else in January. And by March, after all our cluster mapping, like we had done a lot of research, we identified all the business networks, the leaders that worked in these communities. We had pushed our products to them, but we only had 800 small businesses on our system. But something happened. COVID happened in March, and all of a sudden we grew to we grew by about 1,000%. And it just showed that small businesses needed our service, and we were someone they would come to in their times of desperation where they needed an outlet for their business. We weren't ready for this growth, so we had to face a lot of challenges, but luckily we have a strong team that we work with, and I'm very proud of what we are now, but we weren't always that strong. What I found at the very beginning was I had found the most brilliant people to work with. But the thing is, as long as a person or the people you're working with are not quite aligned with your vision, you wouldn't get too far. There's always going to be the wrong steps taken. So initially, I did a lot of micromanaging, trying to get people to do the right thing, to align with the vision. They didn't quite have the same sense of urgency that I had, only because I was thinking, okay, we're going to run out of money. I have my savings in this. So I was thinking, okay, how do we get the solution out fast? But I realized I needed to work really well to align the team with the vision. And now that we have a team that understands what the end goal is, they work and they correct much faster. I do the same. Just learning to take a breath and build people that I can trust. So another thing I did, what they tell you to do as a startup, is find mentors, find advice. So I'm very lucky in that I have a strong network of female role models around me. This is a privilege in my culture. It's not, so where I'm from, women are not the most empowered. We're getting there. But I am privileged in that everyone around me, all the women around me, run agencies, they run businesses. So being this way is the norm. I learned to observe them, how they make decisions, and then I sought advice from them so easily. I didn't need to go too far to get support from them. So as much as I had this network of female role models to tap into, I realized that having a diverse set of mentors is also very important. I know this could be a bit controversial in saying that like, you observe differences between genders, but the reality is this was my experience. And a lot of my female mentors tended to be very careful, be very much strategic about their thinking, about what they would tell me to do, the approaches they would tell me to take. They also took a long time to push me within their network because they needed to understand much more what I was doing, read the process. They were a lot more worried about their reputation. That worked to an advantage for me a lot of the times, because thinking strategically helped me not jump and make the wrong choices. So I'm very happy about that. But I also found that having male mentors was very useful for me. So the male mentors were more likely to stick their necks out, push me forward, push me within their networks. They were much more likely to take risks and also be concerned about the perceptions that people had about them. And I would say one thing that I've taken from observing these two groups is that one thing that's missing is uh, working in groups, women are working in groups that I think, like I myself, am being very deliberate and pushing forward now. So you find the men that are my mentors, they invest in groups, they take decisions in groups, they distribute their risks. Whereas with the women, it's a lot of more bilateral relationships. So I think right now I'm making an active decision to just try and make networks and make these female groups that push each other forward. Ultimately, any type of mentor that I find that I have becomes a good mentor through mutual support and understanding. It's never a one way relationship. Initially, I was always demanding, "Oh, give me advice, push me in this network," but I have to give something back. It has to be a two-way thing for it to actually work very well. They also respect me enough to understand what I'm doing before they give me advice. They also value my time. So, as a startup, especially in Nigeria, you tend to find a million incubators coming to you, a million people coming to you with mentorship programs. But it's important to identify the people that actually value your time and know that you're a startup founder and you need to have a lot of time to nurture your company. You wear different hats all the time. And the best mentors also believe in my vision, or either believe in me or they believe in both. Um, Ultimately, like building any relationship, it takes time to find the right fit. It takes time to understand how to work with a mentor. So another thing I did was I made a very nice pitch deck and started pitching to founders. And one thing I found was that it didn't matter how cool I thought I looked from my end. It mattered who the founders were and how I actually approached them. So a lot of these like funders, we forget that they're like customers that you're selling to. So you need to think of them as that, right? You need to first be on their radar. They need to know about you. You need to demand their time. You don't get airtime on the radio and just put out rubbish. You need to actually make sure that the time you get from them is used well. So I'm going to give an example of like how I wasted time and lost a pitch once. So I was in this pitch kind of contest with a bunch of other people, and I was supposed to be the second to go, and the first person that was supposed to pitch was not there. And I was asked to go on right away. I didn't have my deck queued up, and the pitch was 5 minutes. And they were like, "Oh, we're running out of time. Can you get your pitch up?" I'm trying to get my pitch up, and I felt guilty for wasting people's time. So I was like, "Oh, I'm just going to pitch without a deck." And I went on to pitch without a deck, and everyone else that came after me had the like very nice presentations. Uh, and afterwards, I spoke to one of my advisors, and they were like, "Well, that was very dumb of you to do. Why didn't you demand like your time? You had their time, you just wasted it." And I think I'm learning to not be apologetic about people's time and be a lot more selfish about the approaches I take. Um, I've learned to pitch and fail and ask for feedback. That is the only way I know what I've been doing wrong. I've pitched to a lot of people. They've given me advice. Some people just shut me down completely. But getting feedback from them helped me a lot to grow. And it gives you a sense of closure to know what you did wrong. Again, get into the trust network. This is like any typical type of customer. They need referrals. People trust if someone knows a product and you're like a product. So that's what I found, that the network effect is actually much more stronger than anything else. You get a million startup competitions. People enter into contests. A lot of the times, those things are like lotteries. You don't really stand a chance because they're like 10,000 other applicants. So it helps to just use the network you have or get into their network. And I've learned the hard way, and especially with COVID, to only count money in the bank. So I think through our experience through COVID was that we grew, but then our sources of funding also dried up. And that kind of shows that like you need to be prepared to always be in a position to conserve money. Sorry, it's raining heavily here, so I'm not sure if you can hear me that well. So you need to be able to be in that position to plan properly, to not expect anything um, from people. So the next thing I want to talk about is biases that people face. So a lot of the times people talk about how women are not getting investments, how funders don't respond to women that well. The truth is, I don't know if I'm discriminated against. I don't know if people think about my tribe, religion, gender, or race. I don't know if someone is having a bad day. I don't know if maybe I remind them of someone they don't like. And maybe I have an annoying face to them. I don't know. I can't tell when there's a bias. So I just choose not to deal with it. I choose not to think about it. I move forward. There's always a time trade-off to focusing on these issues. So along the way, I've met different types of people. You'll find yourself facing bullies, especially when you're demanding people something from people, right? There's always that power play, and that's something that I think I've become very cognizant of. So I've confronted bullies. When I first started this, I had a partner. I don't have a partner anymore because it didn't make business sense to work with like a bully. I had people that would be one thing and actually say they're one thing, but are actually another. So it's purely relationships that are designed to be extractive. People will try to swindle me, and I've also had people seeking for favors. I think, again, you find yourself asking things from people, and it puts you in a very tricky power position, and you just need to be mindful of those relationships. So what I do is I just set boundaries. The moment something doesn't seem quite right to me, I shut it down. I don't entertain it any further. I have tried to be a dedicated CEO. That's something people always tell you to do. Focus on your business. Everything should be your business, and sometimes it's not that easy. It's not that easy to be in on your top form all the time. It's your baby. You come up with this concept, you become obsessed with it. Like that's the first problem. Your emotions are tied to it. It's very frustrating when things aren't moving forward, and they would be very slow, especially as a startup that like doesn't have all the capital in the world. Rejection, constantly being told, well, we can't give you this. We don't think you're the right type of fit for the type of person we're trying to invest in. Uh, Depression comes with that. Also, the lack of a safety net. You forget about your savings and focus on bootstrapping and like putting everything into this company. Regrets. I've made choices that I wish I didn't make before that would have put us a bit further. And also insomnia. You don't sleep, and then you get burnt out. All of that happens, and I've learned to just talk to someone. I have someone that I constantly vent to, and that helps me a lot. Um, I've become this person that doesn't have a filter. I just tell all this is what I'm feeling today. So that has been very useful to me. Ultimately, I've learned my biggest lesson, which is that I just need to put a foot forward. And when I say this, it seems like some motivational speak, or it should be something that should be on a poster. But the truth is, this is what it is. Like the only way we got here was taking it one step at a time. And with each step, things changed. So I think this is the principle that I stick to, and I'm going to just keep sticking to going forward. I don't want to be stuck. I need to just take what is the next best step to take? So sometimes, like I said, things happen slowly. The process can be very messy. But with each step, everything comes together. Like I'm seeing it even more so now that we have the users on our platform, the small businesses and farmers deriving value from it. We're starting to prove that our revenue model actually works a bit. our team is doing it, and I'm happy. But it took a long time to get here. Uh, so we now have 14,000 businesses and growing, and I am proud of what we have accomplished. Before we go into the Q&A, I'd just like to be the first to ask a question. So we have Amal Hassan here with us. She's, like I said at the start, someone that I've followed over the years. She's done very, very well as a female startup entrepreneur in northern Nigeria. And I'm in this journey, this constant struggle to push our company forward. And we're not quite there yet in terms of having a good, perfect, cushy situation. So I want to ask you, Amal, what happens when you get there, right? Like, what does it feel like, and what are you doing now in terms of how you think about the future?
Okay, thank you very much for having me. It's really great to be here today. Like she mentioned, my name is Amal Hassan. I'm the founder and CEO of Outsource. Outsource is the first international business process outsourcing company in Nigeria. We currently provide different services to companies in UK, US, and Japan, and Africa, of course. I'm sure you know about my journey. I started my career with an IT training center in Kano, northern Nigeria. And at a point, I realized that I've been training a lot of IT professionals and realized that they couldn't get employed. I started researching on BPO. To cut the story short, it took me 8 years to start Outsource. I started it 4 times and failed until I went live June 2016 with an American client. We started with just 10 systems, 10 seats to an American client. And today we are over 850 providing different services. So what we've done after going live, after finally breaking through after those 8 years and starting on again 4 times, is when we were starting, when I was trying to convince American companies to outsource to a Nigerian company without any experience, when Nigeria is not a known outsourcing destination, each and every one of them was telling me the same thing. How can we outsource our process or our services from a known outsourcing destination and move our operations to an unknown outsourcing destination to you that is inexperienced? So after going live, what we've done to even go live was to prove them wrong, in the sense that we brought in the best people. So we looked at India, we looked at Philippines, we looked at what they're doing, and we tried to make ours different. So we provided America with an American accent, and we provided UK with UK accent, and that's how we got started. So when we started with those 10, we changed the business model entirely. So we looked at, yes, India and Philippines, that is our biggest competition. We realized that they go into a vendor-client relationship with their client, meaning that their client outsource one person per seat. And we realized that if we change it and go into a full-blown partnership where we focus on our client growth, we focus on reducing cost and increasing revenue. That way we understand their business plan, and we decide how we can take them to achieve that business plan. So I will also advise you to do the same thing. Look at what the market is doing, how you can differentiate yourself, which is what we have done. So within a very short time, all those clients that we have outsourced 10 seats, 2 seats, are now moving operations from India and Philippines, and we are beating the performance of this different destinations. So we actually stood out in the sense that we changed the business model. We created a performance base where we are focused on our clients and their growth. And this is how we're able to scale within a very short time. So we looked at their revenue and say, this is where you want to get to. We can actually take away this skill set from you and provide it in Nigeria, which will allow you to reduce cost and increase your bottom line. So we are currently providing lawyers for the US market. We do medical records, we do AI as a service, we do customer service. So we are able to grow because of just that change of model, where our focus is actually our client growth, which is different from what other companies or other destinations are providing, which is vendor-client relationship. They just provide the service and that's it. So if you look at your operations and see how you can optimize the service that you're offering, and look at what other people are doing and try to increase performance and focus on that performance drive, you will actually scale within a very short time. What we've done in terms of performance is we try to understand data, which is what you started doing in the beginning, and you said it didn't work. So if we're working and we're using this process, how is it impacting the business? So for every process you introduce, I don't want to spend so much time. I don't know if I'm talking way after over my time. So every process we introduce, we actually read the data and see the impact it is making on the business. That has helped us to see whatever we introduce, if it's working, and if it's not working, we quickly change it. So basically, that's what we have done to scale, and we are still scaling. We scaled within a very short time after going live. I don't know if I was able to answer your question, but this is what we have done in terms of growth.
You're mute.
So I was saying that I think that answers a bit of my question. And I guess I'll be asking you more questions as time goes by. But Trupti, do you want to take it from here?
Yeah, first I would like to thank you for a great presentation, and thank you, Amal, for the great tip. It was really insightful. Thank you so much. So the first question is from Betty Chan, and her question is, how did you get these farmers change their mindset of past ways of doing things to the new ways, and how did you get how did you get them to buy in?
Okay, so initially, our strategy was to go out there and identify all these farming clusters, identify who are the role models in these communities, and try to work with them. And then another thing was that we developed products specifically tailored to women farmers. So we'd go there, we'd show them like a design of the app we have and ask them, okay, can you interact with this? Are you going to use this? And with the identification of clusters of farmers, one thing we found is that you end up missing the mark a little bit, only because you're identifying these groups, you're identifying their leaders, but you're not necessarily identifying their business leads or the most entrepreneurial people or the people that are actually most likely to lift them up. And then the second thing with the female farmers, we found is that, oh, they understand their product, they know our product, but they're like, oh, why should we trust you, right? Because especially the older females that are not that educated. So what we've done now is to say, can we provide an incentive to, not necessarily a financial incentive, but can we use a system that identifies the women that are purely sales driven in these communities, or the farmers that are purely sales driven in these communities, invite them, have a conversation with them, sometimes even identify them through digital marketing, and then use those people to try and bring the others on board. So that is the strategy we've taken now, as opposed to just going to these massive corporatives and getting their leaders. We're like, okay, if you're interested in getting more sales, we never talk about capital or even getting the end goal, the loans, because that tends to give people the wrong type of incentives. We're simply like, do you want to get better sales or get better customers? Come to us. And then some people show up for the training. Of course, we don't have 1 million farmers, so not everyone shows up at once. We're still demonstrating our value, but that's the way we. Okay.
Thank you. And the second question is from Jyoti Chawla. What are the problems which farmers in Nigeria face, and how did you help them solve them?
Okay, so the first thing, like I said, is market linkages. They may not know where to sell they may not have the right type of linkages to people that have storage or the right type of input. And what tends to happen is a lot of farmers produce, and majority of what they produce goes to waste because it takes time to get to the market. All that. So that's the first problem we've solved. And then they also obviously face climate change issues. They face issues around fires, floods, all of that. So right now we've tried to start introducing insurance. We have a partner that we work with, ACA Africa and ICO America Insurance, that we've partnered with to channel insurance to farmers. And obviously, in the end, the capital. So right now, this is where we're introducing the loans to some of them that have been with us for a while that we've managed to observe.
So the second question from Jyoti Chawla is, with the presence of multiple sellers in markets, how did Coamna manage forces on the farmers to sell their prices for a lower cost?
Okay, so the one thing we've done is say we're not going to control the market. We're not there to do off-taking contracts with people. We're there to introduce them, allow them to vet each other, interact. So sometimes a farmer is selling at below market price, and they realize they can up their prices from just having this open system. And sometimes farmers have their prices a bit higher and they have to come down, but they actually determine that for themselves by seeing the market information. So we don't try to enter, we don't handhold. There's this, like I said, this issue of thinking that these aren't rational decision makers that want to optimize for themselves, and everyone wants to go in, like, hold their hands, make these contracts for themselves. We've taken a different approach to say we're just going to scale, get enough market data, and help them make their decisions by giving them the information.
So there is another question from Jinnah. How do you make the initial contacts with mentors and potential funders and customers? And if you don't have an existing network, how do you first make those contacts?
Okay, so sometimes I send people messages on LinkedIn. Sometimes from the past work I've done, I already have maybe startups that have their existing network that I can ask for a recommendation. Sometimes I ask my existing mentors whether they know this person. For instance, Amal, I wanted her to join this yesterday, and I called one of my mentors. I was like, okay, can you please get her to come in and just have this conversation? It may be helpful for her to give perspective to some of the people here. And here she is today. So that's how it works. You just ask, you send them emails, you send them messages, and it's 10 different strategies, is not one.
So I have one question. How did you come up with the name of your business?
Okay, so we started out with the worst name possible in the world. So because I was dealing with farming cooperatives, I was like, oh, we need to build this trust system. We started out with the name Solidarity Development Cooperative, and that was the name of the company, which is terrible. And then I can't remember what it was that made us change. I think we had to change our company structure. We started out with a limited by guarantee, and we had to move to a limited liability company. And then we were like, oh, we have to have a different name. You can't just transition as the way the system works in Nigeria. So I was like, okay, why don't you find a cool name, a fresh name for a startup? And I was like, okay, we have cooperatives, so co, and then Amana means trust in my language. So we just made it Kwa Amana and ran with it.
That's great. And what has been the proudest moment in starting a business so far for you?
I think, what would I say is the proudest moment? So things tend to happen in slow processes. You don't even realize when you hit a milestone because you're still, so by the time it happens, you're focused on the next thing. I would say the biggest milestone for me was when I woke up in the morning sometime in March and I realized our users had just moved from 800 to 2,000, and I was wondering what happened. And that, I think, was a very exciting moment for me because we're like, okay, this is actually valuable. So I think I would say that was the proudest moment, maybe.
So we have a couple of people who want to ask questions. So Dolapo, would you like to go ahead?
Yes, thank you, Tripti. Thanks, Hafsah. This is really been interesting. I wanted to ask, with regards to how have you dealt with the adaptation of technology with the group, obviously, with those who are on a manor market, because typically we know that the adoption of technology, particularly among women groups, is quite low. So how has Corman actually been working around that?
Okay. So I think so. I work a bit with Dolapo. Sure, she's familiar with like challenges with uptake, especially women farmers are our lowest uptake group, and the first way we started dealing with this was to say, okay, we'll have a manager that onboards their group, and they have an incentive to help them scale because they can get commissions on it. They can do different types of things for their community because of some altruistic drive. And we found that while that worked to an extent, it's not everything, right? So we also have the users that are under managers getting SMS notifications, all of that. But there's no bulletproof way to solve this problem. We're just iterating. We're testing out the platform with the different users. We're trying to say. I think right now we came up with a recent idea, idea recently about gamifying the process, trying to find ways to get women to kind of see incentives and milestones and earn some kind of points by getting other women there. I keep saying women because those have been like it's been the most challenging group. Sorry, like it seems like this is very gendered, but this is the reality currently based on ground. It helps us to think about this unique category and what is going on there and kind of design what we do for them.
Thanks, Hafsah.
So I must say that, like, again, Dolapo, Asma, I'm not sure if Asma is on this call, Nate and Amal are also here as a resource. They're all startup founders. So ask them questions as they also have a lot of context in this space.
Thank you.
Okay.
So Rebecca, would you like to go ahead?
Thanks, Jyoti. Yeah, it's a great talk. Hafsah, it's really, really good to hear from a different perspective and also in a different country as well. I really resonated with what you were saying about planning meticulously before you started a business. And I just kind of wanted to explore that a little bit more about what you were saying there and how you sort of transitioned from doing your research and your business model planning and getting everything together to sort of just stepping forwards and then realizing, okay, the plan doesn't work. I just need to do it this way. Because how, especially when you're relying so heavily on other people, how did you know that you were, obviously you've done your research to know there was a market out there to work with them, but how did you sort of transition to then actually doing it and then knowing that you were going to generate some revenue from that?
So these processes they're very dynamic, right? They happen slowly. Sometimes you don't even know that they're happening. So we had, like I said, we had our business plan and we had our initial concept for our product. We went in fact, we had done a bit of product development where we had like this community currency app system. And then it was just very confusing to the users. And it was like, oh, moment of panic, run back. What do we need to do, right? And then we just learned to let go and be like, go back to them. They give us feedback. We come back, we redesign, go back to them. And it just like, it became this natural process. So I wouldn't say that it just like snapped. I didn't snap into it and go from like product design to product design. It just kept happening day by day in little ways. Going from planning to execution, I would say it was more like, did we get the funding right away to start that, right? So I needed to have like a bit of savings to start executing. And even when I did, I was a bit afraid of the process. And exactly what happened, like what I was afraid would happen happened, right? We had a lot of challenges with like how we was developing the tech, blah, blah, a lot of wasted time. So just, I would say, treat it as a very dynamic process. Don't be afraid to just jump into it. The changes will happen little by little. Just accept them.
Thank you. And were you working full time at the very beginning, or did you just stop and literally start the company from scratch?
No. I was working full time up until, my job allowed me a lot of flexibility. So I was working full time up until August of last year.
Okay, brilliant. And then just final question was also, you talked obviously a lot about the relationships that you've experienced as you've gone along. And I just wondered, how did you come to find the team that you have now running the company? And do you have any advice for others about how you sort of identify who's best to work with?
So initially, I just responded. I looked for the people that would fill the different like boxes that I had checked out. Oh, a product manager, yes. A field person, yes. And I found that some people didn't quite match up to what I thought they were. They were very good at selling themselves. So over the years, like you swap out staff. Some people I've been with, like Asma, who has been with us right from the start. I've had my fights with her. She's had her fights with me. But ultimately our relationship has modified. We have a better way of working together now. So it takes time to find the right people. Sometimes you don't know what a person is until you've actually worked with them. So I wouldn't say that it was some magic at the, like a way of recruiting that worked. I had someone that was highly recommended to me once, and the person kept saying, okay, can I start next week? Can I start next week? And I kept wondering why this person wasn't starting the job. This whole time, the role wasn't filled. And then someone comes to me and said, oh, this person is on Twitter saying, oh, I have this job that I might start, but I don't know if I want to do it. So this person is online, like telling them, this job may not be the right fit. Maybe they won't pay enough, and like just venting online. And I'm here waiting, needing someone to fill this role, doing this job. So I found that like even people that come highly recommended, they may not be the right fit for me. Maybe because they don't think I'd pay them enough. Maybe they don't think what we're doing is good enough for them. So you never know sometimes.
Thank you. I really appreciate your feedback. Thank you.
So I think Camilla's and Michelle's questions are a bit interconnected. So the question is, do you think access to internet is a barrier for you to reach some of your customers?
Yes, I think access to internet is very important. So when we went to test the different versions of our tech with on the field, we found that the app version actually had much better response, but a lot of the people that we were going to did not have smartphones, so they worked mostly with SMS. And there's a strong focus on USSD. We may end up going there, but we didn't go there right away because we found that a lot of the people were actually trying to get to interact with what looked like a USSD menu did not quite get it. So I think in terms of getting images, getting people to interact with pictures and just have a much more dynamic, informative thing to work with, internet is important. We hope that our mobile networks will put up more like infrastructure for that. Yes, that's all we can hope for. The laugher is laughing at this.
So Michelle is also asking, did you automate the onboarding of vendors, or how do your users get on your market?
Okay, so they get on through mostly web. They go on, they sign up, and then they onboard their members, their team members, their group members. So it's not, when you say automated, can you explain what you mean by automation for me?
So basically, so your vendors are small business owners, right?
Yeah.
So then for
Mhm.
them to post their products, how does that happen?
Okay, so they go on, they sign up on the web. How it works is that for you to actually sell under a group lead or a manager, you have to sell the same product. So whatever group of people are selling have to be homogeneous. That way, the one product that features is what the buyers access or contact.
Mhm.
I have a question. So yeah, I'm Nidhi. This was a great talk, Hafsah. It was really amazing to see you. You have really inspired, I'm assuming, me and a lot of other women. I just want to ask you if you were to give an advice to women who are considering entrepreneurship and people like me who are afraid or like have lack of confidence. If you were to give one piece of advice, what would it be?
But if I say take a step and go for it, it's going to seem like I'm reading again. I'm being a motivational speaker. I would say that I've always been also a very reserved person, not really that confident in what I do. I didn't start this trying to be an entrepreneur. I actually was doing research, trying to find a solution. I thought I'd disappear into some PhD, and I just like had this strong conviction about what I was doing, and I just kept pushing and moving forward towards that. And I think the advice is to actually find something you truly believe you can solve or build and go for it. So there has to be that obsession, that tunnel vision, that focus on what you're doing.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any more questions?
So
I only have just one more. Sorry.
Yeah, go
Sorry to
ahead.
interrupt you.
Becky, go
I only
ahead.
have one more, sorry, to ask. Where do you plan to take the company in the next couple of years? What are you working towards?
So I'm working towards, we have a long set of product features that we're developing. So we're adding them slowly and incrementally. We just lost our best developers, like our best developer like 2 months ago. I don't know what company. Our developers moonlight for the best companies that like pay them a lot. So we don't move as fast as we'd hope. So the hope is to get these product features out and then find the next problem to solve, because our objective is to identify these gaps ultimately and build technology for them. So I already have two ideas in my head about gaps I've seen that I would like to fill, but I guess I'll talk about them once we get there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any more questions? Okay, I don't see any more questions.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so do you mind giving like Dalapo, Nate, and Asma a minute to like
Sure.
talk about their own startup, because I think it's important to hear from different like experiences of a startup journey. So maybe Dalapo, do you want to give a minute of your Dalapo? You're on mute.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Hafsah. So I'm actually just setting up a plastics recycling center in Lagos. When Hafsah asked me to to share, I said, well, we actually haven't begun operations yet. But she said, you could just at least just share where you are in the process. And so, as you might know, I mean, Lagos is a densely populated state. We don't even know exact numbers are, but we say about 20 million people. And so there's a lot of waste. There's a lot of waste that goes into drainages, that goes into water bodies. And so a few years ago, so my background is in international development, and in 2013, I was working on a DFID project that was looking at construction waste specific. And so I had the privilege of working um, on that project, and I was exposed to waste management for the first time, albeit within construction specific body. And I just started to get very interested in waste. I'd always been irked by people throwing out bottles on the streets and just litter. But while working this project, I got to know a lot more about.
So it seems like your network is dropping off. Maybe we can move forward to Nate and then circle back at this time. Nate?
Everybody, thanks, Hafsah. I'm a startup founder, but my actual passion is social enterprise startups. So I don't start a lot of them though. I help people who start them. So Hafsah is a good example of, you hear a story and you hear the passion about the solution they want to create where they are. And that's kind of the thing that catches me. So I actually have a company that helps social enterprise startups move from grant funding to impact investment to venture capital and private equity, kind of along that spectrum. I'm really, as I said, motivated by companies like Koamana. I'm based in Nairobi, but obviously from my accent, you can probably tell I'm American. So anyway, that's what I do, mostly in agribusiness and energy and water and sanitation. Thanks.
Nice
Thanks.
meeting you all. So thank you so much, Hafsah. This was a great presentation, and it was nice knowing your team members and your mentors. And it was a great presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me, and hopefully I'll be looking up your stories as well.
Yes.
To understand what you're doing next.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Everyone.
Thank
Thanks
you.
a lot, Hafsah. Bye, everyone.